What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet for today. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about. One of which has to do with the idea of drifting and kind of to bring some awareness to that. Drifting is when we are just going throughout our day and maybe something is a triggering event, like just scrolling through Twitter or just some nonsense from the media, or maybe somebody in your space is just being a fucking asshole, or whatever it happens to be. One of the things that is bothersome, is when something happens and then immediately the old kind of mindset unconsciously just fills in the gap. It's like maybe somebody just said something very fucking hateful, or something that you're proud of and you're like feeling good, about your progress, and then somebody wants to hate on it and just be like, oh well, and then just shit on it, with it, whatever comes out of their mouth. Then you start to spin out, want to attack them, or wish harm on them, or wish they get their karma and get punished, and you start going down that rabbit hole, where it kind of just gets you more and more into that old mentality that you're separate from that other person, you're separate from everything, everything's random chaos, and it was, not part of an awakening process, that this just happened, like you're a victim. Not to say that things don't happen, it's like, I was like, the other day I smacked my finger on, something, I just cracked the nail. I mean, you can kind of, I don't know if you can see that, and it's like really hurt, this is almost like, I don't know, 5 days later, it's starting to feel better. But it's like, it's not to say things don't ever happen, it's like, I know through my own life, shit can get fucking real quick, and not to be in la la land about that as being a possibility, but to realize that that's a direct correlation between the state of consciousness that you are either unconsciously or consciously creating in your own self, and then seeing the reflection of that. Part of like drifting is forgetting that how much your own inner beliefs and your assumptions and your faith and all this kind of stuff in your inner world is being projected outwards. And as we kind of move into more awareness, awakening, whatever words you want to call this, it's like you get confronted by a lot of this drama and this fear and this pain and this suffering and all this bullshit. And instead of just being drifted into it and just letting that just simmer in your consciousness and become more and more amplified in your life, it's like you stub your toe in the morning. Next thing you know, oh, you're running late to work. Your car didn't start. You're hitting every light. You go to the gas station. Somebody's dicking around with lotto tickets, and then you're 15 minutes late. Then you got rode up, and that costs you your attendance bonus, and it just spirals and just gets worse and worse and worse. And then, by the end of it, you're ready to just rip somebody's fucking head off and not care that you're like that. But, one of the things about drifting, instead of sitting there getting more and more amped up about it, is to, on some level, allow that feeling, that the thoughts are kind of it's hard to tell where the chicken or the egg. It's like the thoughts and the emotions. It's all happening so intertwined. As you're sitting there getting more and more amped up about it, drifting more and more into like maybe a state of rage or anger or hatred or just murderous or vengeful, whatever it happens. I mean, it's easy to get like that too. And I get annoyed by people that pretend like they're immune to that, like wanting to fucking just beat somebody's head in, because I don't believe that's real. I believe like a lot of people are like that. I know I can be like that. But then what happens for me is like, if I get like that, lash out, maybe say something or get kind of intense, normally I then feel worse. It's like you build something up in your mind of like, oh, I just can't wait to tell that motherfucker off, and or be intimidating or whatever, and then it happens, and then you actually experience it. I always feel like the opposite, after it's said and done. It's like, then I feel guilty, I feel bad, I feel like a certain way, and then it's like you don't, it's never that satisfaction of just like, oh, I just can't wait till they just get whatever's, and yeah, and it's always like backfires. But part of the old insanity of the old mindset is constantly like, well, that happened this time, but next time it won't happen. You know, so he's like doubling down, doubling down. You see that even being played out in culture, United States culture at least, that I see. You know, this constantly doubling down on errors, doubling down on insanity, doubling down on just getting further and further away from creation. You know, it's just it's almost getting to the point where it's like you can't say this is a marker, you know, without you know, somebody thinking, no, that's a crayon, because you know, because I believe it's a crayon. It's like, you know, I get on some level triggered, you know, I wouldn't say like bad, you know, but it's just so ridiculous to me, you know, so especially, you know, some of this like LGBT bullshit, you know, it's just like, really, you know, it's like you're gonna have a grown man competing with women. You know, that's stupid. You know, I mean, it's just becomes so stupid, you know, where it's just like, I don't even want to pay attention. I don't even want to hear about it. I can't believe people are even giving that attention. You know, it's so ridiculous. You know, it'd be like the same level, I guess, from my perspective. And not to sit there and judge anybody that's, you know, like having some of these like sexual identities or whatever, because ultimately that's not your identity anyway. You know, it's like you're making a persona, an identity about it, you know, when ultimately, you know, unless that identity is combined with your identity in Christ, then a lot of time that's a limitation. It's not who you actually are. You know, it's part of like the old ego identity where it's like, you know, oh, defining yourself based on another. You know, it's like, oh, well, I'm a whatever, fill in the blank, you know, and if it has a contrary binary component to it, it's a good sign that you're creating out of separation, which is just creating suffering and ultimately not expressing who you actually even are anyway, you know. But any of these like sexual identities or any of that stuff, you know, it's like take that up with your creator. You know, it's like don't let anything that you're doing or thinking or any of that kind of stuff separate you from God. You know, ultimately ask God for help in trying to understand what sexual shit is even about anyway. You know, let alone just letting the world tell you what it is. You know, the world will tell you the exact opposite. You know, it's like, it's really obvious, you know, if you spent any amount of time, you know, unplugging from the world, you know, the world is not, yeah, I mean, it's like, if the world says one thing, you should do the exact opposite. You know, that would probably put you in better alignment. You know, it's like, even with the COVID shit, you know, for me, it was like, oh, you know, the world's saying how great this, you know, face masks and vaccines and shit are, and it's just like, oh, that's a good red flag to me not to ever fucking wear one for one, or take a vaccine for two, you know. And if they say it's safe and effective, more than likely it's the opposite, where it's dangerous and ineffective. You know, but you know, not to put that out there for people that have taken it for some, you know, I think the whole thing is a mental game anyway. You know, I think it's all, you know, it's your mindset. You know, if people are taking shit out of fear, well, you know, if they aren't working on the relationship with God, you know, then if it's not something that's 99% survivable, they're going to just carry that fear to the next thing. Now they're going to be worried as causing, oh, well, you know, I took this and now I'm having complications and problems. It's like that fear of death is going to follow you, you know, regardless, you know, until you address it, until you start working on your relationship with God. But it's the same thing with this, you know, the new dramas, you know, with war and conflict and lie. I mean, basically, the world is just lying 24/7, and it's like that's what's so funny, because I've seen this play out for 20 years. You know, where it's just like, oh, well, there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and oh, you know, we got to drop some freedom on these Afghanis, and yeah, you know, all this bullshit. You know, it's like none of that had anything to do with like the supposed terror attacks. And then all of a sudden, you know, for the people that were too young to experience that shit show, you know, it's just the same dumb just narratives and everything. I mean, people just weren't, at least now more people are catching on to it, you know, where like 20 years ago it was like, oh yeah, we should you know, have some freedom fries and do a invasion of a fucking country. Where it's like now you're seeing that being played out again, with a different scenario, and it's just like the same shit. It's like if people didn't learn anything over this 2 years, they didn't learn anything in 20 years. It's like the past 2 years where it's like directly affecting people. It's like, okay, well, you didn't learn anything over 2 years, where it's like everything that they're presenting on the media is just lie, 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 lie. All these institutions lie, lie, lie. But it's like, oh, well, now there's a new chapter of horror happening in the world. Now they're telling the truth. It's like they don't fucking tell the truth. That's part of the fucking loop-de-loop mindset of like, oh, they can't constantly just be wrong and lying. It's like, that's what for 20 years this has been going on. It hasn't changed. They've been doing the same shit over and over and over again. It's just like, but a big part of it, I believe, is part of like it wakes people up more than anything. You start seeing how many more people are consciously getting like what's actually happening. But it's also having the opposite effect on others, where they're just doubling down on being unconscious. Unfortunately for them, creating more and more suffering for themselves as they separate themselves from God and love and truth. And believe more and more of lies, which then creates more and more error, which creates more and more an identity based on an error, which then just creates more and more separation and suffering. So eventually, they're only ever doing it to themselves. The people that are believing lies and illusions, and not to let that start to spin you out either, because, it's like, I know personally that could be very draining, especially when it's like your spouse or your fucking family or your friends or people you work with, or just feels just like you just want to shake these people at times. But, it's like, part of that. And then also they can be very triggering because it feels like they're just being a puppet to Satan, just saying all these limitations and fear. But, people are expressing what's going on within them, so you can start to, want to attack them or destroy them or hope something bad happens or just hope they just disappear or whatever. But a lot of times, especially the more consciously aware you are, of not only who you are, but your relationship with God and everything else, and how powerful your inner beliefs and assumptions are, you can start fucking putting that shit on them too, and like where you can bless people, you can also curse them, and the thing is, when you do, then it comes right back on you, and you get to experience the suffering that you just caused on another person. And you can believe me or you can not believe me on that, but I'm just telling you from personal experience, where I have been guilty of doing that. Not really consciously, but just like, oh, I just wish that person would just fuck off and I never see him again, and something bad happens to him or whatever. And then, in a couple days later, next thing you know, it's just like, you get a hysterical fucking person coming over and saying how something just terrible just happened to this person, and you got to deal with their crying mother, and then you get to see how that impacted people. Versus, and then you feel that suffering and pain that you cause them, and it's like then you're only doing it to yourself, and that just plays out over and over and over again. I've experienced it playing out over and over again. It's like you hope something bad happens to somebody, and then it comes back right on you in some way, some shape, some form. The shit that you wanted for another person to suffer, so they get it, so they wake up. Then next thing you know, there is no other. You're doing it to you, and it's like, how many times are you gonna keep doing that? I don't know. It's just that's your choice, and it's also my choice. When I do that kind of stuff, but it's like, how many times can you repeat the same loop, do the same thing? Oh, I wish something bad happens to that person, and the next thing something bad happens to you, equal to what you were just doing. There's obviously a better way, and when that starts happening over and over again, it's like, okay, well, do I really want them to suffer because that'll make me suffer, or is it better that I recognize, through discernment, when they're being puppeted by fear and Satan and fucking separation and illusion and everything else? It's one thing to be able to observe it, say like, oh yeah, that's what that is. That's a weed, obviously. It's another to sit there and want to destroy the person that's representing that state. And I think that's a big part of forgiveness, even though it can be difficult, because a lot of that is just drifting into the old mind of vengeance, which when you start to forgive their sin, they start, basically coming to you, basically almost mirroring some satanic thing, that's obvious. You can sit there and want to punish them, hurt them, but that's what it wants. That's part of the trick of evil. Is it wants you to fuck with it. It wants you to hurt it. It wants you to fucking get to its level, because then it just comes back on you, and it's like, sucker. It's that kind of a relationship with it, where it's just like, you can be triggered by it, and then you finally pop and snap, and then it makes you feel worse, and it's like you fell for the same trick over and over again. But instead of drifting into that, a lot of times that's unconscious. That's this through drifting. That's, you didn't consciously want to hurt yourself. You didn't consciously want to have your day ruined or ruin somebody else's day, or any of that kind of shit. It's like it just happened. A lot of times, because you drifted, you got to start connecting the dots, looking backwards when you do drift like down, and then that next thing you're manifesting a state of separation and anger, for example, or vengeance or murder or whatever, whatever the state is, especially when it's directed towards the quote unquote other. And when you see shit going on in the world when it comes to like war and vengeance and stuff like that, it's reflecting the war within the minds of the people, on some level, so that's why you be the change. Me personally, I think the result of what's going to happen is just more and more people are going to wake up, and the people that are warmongering and wanting vengeance on others are just going to have vengeance put back on them, and it's just going to backfire horrendously, just the way COVID backfired, and it's just because that's just what it does. It always backfires because we're not separate. You can't, you're going to war within yourself, basically, and when you do that, there's no winner. It's only just lowered state of being, lowered frequency, and at the end of it, it's just like, instead of having vengeance, because like part of the error in like even vengeance and suffering in general feels like, but there's more likely a divine reason for it, because it gets uncomfortable enough, it gets painful enough, it forces people to wake up and stop doing it, but you're not the judge and jury when it comes to like putting that on other people, because God does that. God reflects it perfectly back to him, because that's always what's going on, is the inner world is being reflected out, and if you're having vengeance towards others, and vengeance is going to be on you. If you're filled with illusion and lies, then that's going to be reflected back to you, and it's all of a sudden you're just going to become hell. You're going to become heaven, just by what you want, what you're actually desiring. But not to like make that be scary. It's only ever now, and so it's like, are you telling yourself, things that would probably be best described as demonic, in the present moment, or angelic? That's another way to look at it. And this freaking fly is just buzzing around. Hopefully it's not distracting. But like when that stuff starts happening, though, it's really important to start working on a way to catch it, resolve it, stop reacting to it, and be almost like lighthearted about it. If you start spinning out in your mind, maybe you're on like Twitter and you're just so tired of just the retarded, upside down, satanic. I want to say it's the opposite of logic, unlogic, irrationality. Just the sky's purple. It's like, no, it's blue. Obviously, you colorblind. It's like, don't discriminate me. It's the same. It's just like the clown aspect of things. It's like, 200-pound man, with long hair, fighting a 180-pound, 190-pound female. And just beating the fucking shit out of her. It's just like, what is this? Why is this okay? It's not. I don't think it is okay. I think it's bullshit. I don't, I wouldn't want that for my stepdaughters. If they spent all of this, efforting, practicing, competing, to have a fair competition, and then it's just, you have to go up against some dude that has the strength of a man naturally and just can lift weights and just get ripped. Yeah, that's bullshit. But like and that's just my 2 cents. I'm sure that's very triggering for a percent of people that hear this. But like it is what it is. And one of the things I'd like to continue to kind of bring to you guys' awareness though is when the drifting first starts. When you see something like that that's obviously just like, come on. Instead of getting mad and starting to lash out, start getting in your mind about it, letting these thoughts start to just amplify. Have a lighthearted approach to it and allow it to happen. It's like, okay, my mind is going to drift. Let's drift. What's the worst thought I can think? What's the worst feeling I can feel right now then? Instead of reacting to it and running from it, let's face it head on. What's the worst idea I can have? What's the worst feeling I can feel? Let's just feel it. How long is this going to last? It's only ever now. It's not going to last. Is it now? Now. Just be in it. Let it be. And a lot of times just by not running from it, not reacting to it, and just actually just feeling it, feeling the worst thing you can think, feeling the worst feeling you can feel, you realize it's like powerless. It's like, oh, that's what I was running from, this sensation, this errant thought. Let's let it go. How bad can I think? What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst feeling I can feel right now? And then just start breathing and just feel it. A lot of times, just by doing that, not running from it, by facing it, a lot of times, part of why we don't want to do that is because we feel like, oh, that thought, is like something God would not want us to be thinking or feeling or whatever. But that's the time to address it. It's like, okay, God's within you. You're feeling it. You're thinking it. Shit got real. God's in control of everything. God allowed it to happen. So is it really that bad? If God lets you do it, lets you feel it, lets you think it, lets you do that when God's leading you through this thing? Or is that a limitation that is going to just keep coming up until you face it? Is it part of like you just not facing it, not addressing it, that's part of your consciousness at the moment? That keeps prolonging it, running from it. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to think that because God will be mad at me. And so I'm just going to bury it back down, even though God's the one that brought it to the surface of your consciousness to deal with anyway. So allow, the thing to play out in your mind. And then, once it loses that energy, that spark, by being almost sarcastic about it to yourself, by being lighthearted about it, it's like, oh, that's the worst you can think. That's the worst you can feel. Oh, you have like a murderous thought towards somebody. You have like hoping somebody gets what, you have the thought. It's like, do you still feel that way after you allowed it to be knowing damn well that will could happen? You just as easily curse them as you can bless them, and it would probably fucking happen. And not only that, but then you'd probably be drawn into it then too, and then it would come back on you and everything. Is it worth it? Part of this thing is taking away a lot of that kind of mental resistance and that mental battling, but also being real with yourself and your creator of what the fuck is going on in your consciousness, regardless of whether it's consciously or unconsciously, it's there. So you can continue to let it just run unconsciously, unaddressed, undealt with. Every time it comes up, to try to shove it back down, pretend like that helps. Even though then the next time it comes up, next time it happens, it's just right there, ready to be fucking just like that. Just, oh, it's back. But constantly check yourself when that's going on. If you're taking your thoughts way too seriously and being very reactive to them, if you're feeling a lot of emotion about it, stop running from the emotion, stop running from your thoughts. Realize that God hears your thoughts, that it's not it's not something you're keeping secret. Everything in creation is connected. So it's like, if you're thinking in thoughts, there's a corresponding state of consciousness that you can view out into that creation and see that playing out as a person representing that, mirroring that back to you. And it's on you really, whether or not you want to pull that weed out of your consciousness or you just want to pretend like it's not a weed and it starts choking the life out of your tomatoes, which is your good fruit of your mind. It just depends. That's on you, really. It's like, I'm going to tell you what to do. Use your own God-given connection to go within. Ask God yourself what is right, what is real, what is true. But this is just something I'm kind of dealing with, is dealing with kind of frustrations and difficulties and, just the same things going on, and it just gets so draining and tiring. And at the same time, it's like these highs and these like lows and everything else. And then what triggers me personally is just like people that just love their fucking suffering. It's just like they just want to sit there and tell you, oh well, it's some noble thing. It's just like, then you haven't suffered enough. Then if you spend how long you spend the present moment doing that? Because it's either you're doing that or you're not, and it's like, if you love it so much, if there's some noble thing about it, then fucking break your legs and fucking can't walk and fucking, get rid of all your money, give it to everybody else, and let your kids run crazy, let all this thing, let everything be a fucking chaotic mess for you then, and then sit there and tell somebody that suffering is good. It's like, fuck you. That's how I feel about it. I get so tired of these people that just sit there and because it's like, okay, well, it's fine. You want to suffer, and there's some noble thing. You feel so self-righteous in your suffering. Then stop making others suffer. Then it's like, if you can just be it and be suffering without fucking with anybody else, then it's not a problem. Go suffer in a corner somewhere. Who cares? But it's when you're affecting other people, trying to suck their energy. Because your choices and your fucking inability to realize that God is your source for this energy that you're just constantly sucking the life out of everybody else with, and until you realize that, then it's like, suffering doesn't just involve you then, because you're sucking the life out of everybody around you, and that's the fucking problem. And so, I get... really, really annoyed by that, but like, and I hear it so often too. It's just like, really, because a lot of people equate that with like some like noble spiritual thing. It's like, even it's not just Christians that do that either. I mean, it's like Buddhists too. I mean, it's like everybody. It's all these fucking people. It's like, it's like, what would the Buddha say? It's like, enlightenment is the end of suffering. Yet you talk to any of these Buddhists, none of them think that they're in their lifetime that'll ever happen. it's like oh, my next life I'll be enlightened. It's like, what are you doing? What are people doing? This freaking fly, But the same thing with like Christian people. It's like they're always connecting with like crucifying themselves. It's just like, why aren't you ever connecting with the resurrected Christ? But, I think that's, again, part of an identity shift that, people more and more so will start to kind of manifest amongst themselves once they realize that is a possibility, but until then, you just got to keep dealing with these people, I guess. I guess maybe forgiving them and imagining them in like a state of consciousness where they're not that, or just accept that that's just who they are, and that's just what they want to be, and that's just what they're going to be. But like, I guess with that, it's like, treat others the way you want to be treated. So if I was just drifted into a state of whatever, and somebody was like, obviously, something going on with him, elevate to like a better state, obviously that would be great. So. But at the same time, it's like, I don't even do that anymore. I used to, it's like I pray for everybody that God's will be done on them, but if that, whatever that looks like, then I guess that it is what it is, but like, unless somebody asks me specifically, it's just like, then stay in that fucking state for all I care. Hopefully it wakes your ass up, and you don't take too many people with you, and in your suffering train. But that is what some people like, I guess, but I don't believe people like it, but they just believe it's real for whatever reason, and whatever. So with that being said, hopefully that wasn't a triggering conversation. I don't know, I'm kind of triggered, I guess. Just it's one thing after another, it starts to become yeah, just tiring. Just the madness. You just want it to be surrounded by people that aren't retarded. It's just it kind of gets to that point after a while. It's like, how long do you want to be in a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning not being drunk? It's what it feels like. A lot of people are just stumbling around drunk all the time. And like you're the sober one, and it's just like tired of those kind of interactions with people. But hopefully, after this thing's said and done, and people snap out of their whatever's, hopefully that will start to reflect that more and more so too. So, until I think I'm a balance, so till the next now, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I also appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. If you are making media, if you're making truth videos or whatever, need some music, feel free to hit up my SoundCloud. If you can download the track, you can use it for free, and I don't care if you monetize your video, like YouTube video or whatever, but if you're like doing that for like a profession or whatever, and you got a budget and whatnot, feel free to, there's a license link in a lot of those tracks, appreciate it, or if anything, just fill out a cue sheet if it's going to be broadcast, and I think that's going to be it. So until the next now, have a good day, and God bless.